Welcome to Weekly Cheats, where after eating clean for an entire week, it's time for something sweet. Today we're going to be making the best ice cream ever, pralines and cream. It's my personal favorite. By the time you're done, it will be yours too if it's not already. But before we start on anything, we're going to sanitize so everything's nice and clean. Because again, in our own house, there is no excuse to have a dirty workspace. We don't want to get people sick, or ourselves. Also, if you haven't subscribed yet, or if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit subscribe and then click the little notification to turn on alerts. So you get a notification every time we have a new post come up, every Thursday. Also, if you're new to the channel, it's your first time seeing it, go ahead and give me a comment and I'll comment back personally. Let's get started. All right, so the first thing that we need to do is cut up our pecans. I like the ones from Costco. You can get whatever ones you want. This is in a 2-pound bag. We're gonna use about half of it. This is if you have a 6-quart ice cream maker. I should clarify that. This is gonna be a 6-quart recipe that we're gonna go over today. All right, I like to chop these with a knife. I used to put these in the food processor, and the biggest problem with that is, yeah, you get them chopped up, but a third of it turns to dust. We don't want dust. So if we just chop them by hand, we avoid creating so much dust with them, and we can just keep them to the sizes that we want. You don't want whole ones, but you don't want them too small. Just want them big enough that you can actually get some texture in the ice cream. So we're not cutting up into tiny, tiny little pieces. Even ones about that size are fine. We just don't want the whole thing. All right, now we need to make the pralines. What we've got here is a 1.5 cups of brown sugar. I've got a 1/2 teaspoon of salt and a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. On top here, I've thrown a teaspoon of vanilla. And then to help this melt down a little bit faster, what we do is we throw 1 tablespoon of water. What we're going for here is we're looking to heat this up to the point where it'll start to boil, and then we'll throw our chopped pecans in there. Okay, we're almost boiling enough to where we want to start adding the nuts in. While we do, because this is a candy, we don't want to burn it, so we're going to take it off the heat real quick. And then add our pecans. Again, with this being sugar, we don't want to burn it, so we just want to stir it so it looks like it's coating everything well, and then be done. Turn the heat down a little bit. Find that it's best to just spread them out as much as you can so they're able to cool down as fast as possible. That way there's really no time to wait for these once we're done making the ice cream base. Boom, ready to go. Don't lick the spoon. I have made the mistake of trying to just lick the spoon right afterwards. If there's stuff clumped on it, it's hot, it'll burn you. Don't do it. First thing we do before we start making anything is fill up the bucket. That way the water can soak into the wood and the bucket can essentially expand as much as possible. So when we're actually making the ice cream, you've got all the ice in there, salt that's gonna make that melt. You don't want there to be any cracks that will leak through. So filling up the bucket first and letting it sit for the 30 minutes, however long it takes us to make our batch of everything before we put it in the canister is important. For this recipe, it's an incredibly simple base. It's gonna be 8 eggs to make it super creamy. Be 2.5 cups of sugar. We'll put a teaspoon of salt in there, 3 tablespoons of vanilla. Mentioned in another video that I prefer Watkins vanilla. Again, with coronavirus, I still can't find Watkins, so we're using McCormick, which is a good second. And then once we beat it for a little bit, we'll actually add a little bit of cream or milk if you prefer to help thin it out. I'll walk you through that process. Once all of that has been beat in, I'm gonna add 1/3 cup of caramel to make it nice and smooth and give that little texture to it. So we'll start with the eggs. I always like cracking these into a separate bowl, as I've previously explained, because it's easier to find the eggshells than if you have it in a big bowl like this, if you happen to get any in. But it's full. Whole eggs, all of it goes. Throw in our sugar. All of our sugar. We're gonna let it beat for a little bit. While this is beating, we can go ahead and we can add our salt. And then we can add our vanilla. What we're gonna do is we're gonna scrape the sides down. As you can see, the sides have a lot of sugar crystals on them still. One of the most important things to make sure that the sugar actually dissolves properly, so we're gonna first scrape it down, but then once we turn the mixer back on to beat it, we're gonna add just a little bit of milk. It can be milk, it can be almond milk, it can be 2%, 1%, it doesn't really matter. There's not an actual amount that we measure out for this because we're looking for it to change consistency as we add the milk. So I'll show you what that is gonna turn into, but you'll see when we first turn this back on that it's gonna be still pretty grainy, and I'll slowly add milk in order to get it to get more of like a velvety texture, and you can see that it's not as grainy anymore. At that point, once we've hit that, we'll let it beat for about 2-3 minutes, and we'll add some caramel in there. You can see up on the edges, it's still nice and grainy up there. Slowly adding some milk, add a little bit more. Now you can see how it's kind of more of a pudding-like texture. And it's still grainy, we'll need to scrape it off the sides. But the actual base itself is not as grainy. So we can add our caramel. 1/3 cup. I like Ghirardelli. I've used Smucker's, I've used all the other ones. Ghirardelli is by far superior. This off and we'll scrape the sides down real quick. Get those. All right. Now we beat this. In medium high speed. You don't want to completely whip it. Okay, as you can see, it's foamy, but it's not whipped. Okay, a little frothy on top. We're just gonna dump this straight into the canister. Scrape the sides a little bit. Now we're going to go ahead and add our pralines. Sometimes I just like to eat these because they're delicious. As we can see, they're little, they call them nipples. They're little rings here. And we filled it up with the base. We're going to fill it up to the third one from the top with cream. And again, I like the DARIGOLD 40% heavy. There's nothing better. If you buy anything else that's not the 40%, this is at Costco. It's great. Again, it looks like glue. Almost. But there is no better cream to use for this. It'll come out almost like in a custard texture. If you fill it up, it doesn't look like it's very full, but if you fill it up too much past that third ring, that is about it. If you fill it up much more than that, it will expand and it'll come up through this into your mixer and kill the motor. So don't do that. Just stop there and be happy. Save some cream for leftover and you're good. Okay, this is ready to go in the bucket now. All right, so now we're gonna add the canister. We've emptied the water out of this. Should be ready to go. So add the canister. There's a little notch at the bottom. I'm not gonna tip it and show you, but there is a little notch at the bottom so it spins on that metal part down there, right? So make sure you line that up correctly. Okay. I like White Mountain. This is the brand that I have, picked it up on Amazon. For what I've seen, it's the most durable one and has the best, longest lasting motor. However, it is also the most expensive. So if you want to go with a cheaper brand like Nostalgia or any one of those other ones, feel free to do that. Just know you might replace it a little bit faster than you would one of these. I have a notch on here for every batch that I've made. I think I'm coming up on 20 soon. Still going strong. Okay. One of the things with these, you need to make sure the logo on the motor is the same side as the logo on the bucket. Why? Because they said so. I don't know. This is super duper loud. One of the things that I want to point out before I actually plug this in is salt is very, very important. This is a 50-pound bag of salt that you can get for your water softener at Costco. It's less than $4 in most places. Or you can spend a ridiculous amount of money and you can get ice cream rock salt, which is like, for a little 4-pound box is $11, $8 in some places. Or you can just get rock salt for your water softener for $4 and change maybe for 50 pounds and not have to buy it but once a year, and that's great. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put ice to about this line, then you're going to put a ring of salt, okay? And then we'll go up to about this line and put another ring of salt. Then I like to cover all the way up to the top and put one last ring of salt across the top. So I'll let you watch how I do that. But the reason for that is that way you get even spacing of the salt to keep it nice and cool all the way through evenly. Once you're done with all of the ice and everything, it only takes about 22 to 24 minutes and it's done. So it goes pretty quick. All right, let's go. This is super loud. So we're done. One thing that I want to point out is about halfway through, around the 12 to 14 minute mark, I always like to throw more ice on top, otherwise it'll melt down a bit and then the top ends up being all melty and nobody wants to eat melty ice cream, so you throw away the top third of your batch. This just makes it a little bit You'll still have a melty top, but it won't be that far down. The next thing we need to do is drain the water out of this thing. They have on one side, there's a hole like this, nothing on that side, and that is specifically so that you can tip it without having to tip it all the way and drain the water. You want to get the water out because the water essentially isn't as cold as ice, and so it'll make the ice cream itself, it'll stop it from setting up. How thick it is. Yeah. So now we got this beater out so it doesn't get stuck in there. To be able to scrape it down a little bit. In this case, this has done us a favor and allowed us to just pull this piece right out so we can scrape this off real quick. This is everything you want in ice cream. These are pints. Little paper ones, you can get them on Amazon. They're not very expensive. Usually come in like a 40 pack or something like that. You can get half-gallon ones if you want. In this case, I'm going to give some of these away and keep some for myself. Then I also have forced portion size. I can't eat more than 1 pint at a time. So yeah. Start with some Ghirardelli caramel. A little bit at the bottom so there's a little bit of happiness when you're finishing it off. We're just going to start scooping it out. Ideally, if you're making this for like a party or a gathering of some kind, you would leave it in the canister. When I make something like this for it, I actually will get a big bowl, I'll fill ice in it, and then a smaller bowl, so it's kind of like a double-walled bowl, and I'll actually scoop all the ice cream out, and then I'll start layering, well, not all of it, I'll leave about that much. And then I'll start layering it back in with some caramel in there. So you get it like this, essentially. Everybody loves to scoop through and find more happiness, right? When they're going through. So this way we can kind of layer it. We got a little bit of the flavor of it, but it's always nice to see it. I haven't given this any extra time to set up since I just opened it, but it will continue to set up in the freezer, or if you leave it in here. As you can see, if you want to get close with it, as you can see on the sides, it's already starting to get hard to scrape off, which is kind of, it'll set up all the way, even more than this, kind of custard consistency. It's important to cap these and get them in the freezer as quickly as you can, otherwise it will melt and it won't set up right. I like to make sure we don't have any dead space in there. If we can fit more, we should. All right. Now for us, 1 bowl for me, 1 bowl for Adam. These are actually double-walled bowls that I got on Amazon because it keeps the ice cream super cold. And it's great. These are 13-ounce bowls, so I can kind of force myself to not eat too much in 1 serving. All right, one thing I forgot to mention and forgot to do because I was so busy instructing, put the bowls in the freezer for 2 to 5 minutes so they're super cold before you put the ice cream in. No melty, it's great. But there you go, pralines and cream ice cream, homemade, super simple recipe. Like I said, if it's not your favorite, it will be, it's mine. It's everybody's that I've shared it with as well. So enjoy. If this is your first time watching it, make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Hit the little notification icon to get alerts when we post every Thursday. And if this is your first time watching a video, go ahead and comment. Tell me what you think and I'll give you a personal reply back. Thanks.